Media. It's pretty great, right? The Google definition for media is the main means of mass communication, broadcasting, publishing, and the internet, regarded collectively. But we don't need to use these fancy words. Media is anything you watch, you read, you play. Basically, anything that's content is media. So I don't want to waste your time, you already know and love media, but what I do want to talk about are controversies in media. Media has always been susceptible to criticism regarding its content, whether it be violence, language, or just inappropriate content. There's always been cries to mediate how entertainment is consumed. Many of these criticisms come from parents, and for good reason. No parent wants their child consuming content which is inappropriate for their age, which is why one of the most controversial pieces of media are video games. According to Healthline.com, over 90% of American children play video games, and it shows. Countless controversies have been stirred over the fear of violence in video games affecting the youth. So, how do you make sure that video games are being played by the right age demographics, making sure any content inappropriate for younger ages aren't displayed to said ages? Yikes. Close enough. What even is an ESRB? ESRB stands for Entertainment Software Rating Board, and that's great. I love acronyms as much as the next guy, but what does the ESRB do? Well, according to the website, ESRB ratings provide information about what's in a game or app so parents and consumers can make informed choices about which games are right for their family. Ratings have 3 parts: rating categories, content descriptors, and interactive elements. So the ESRB rates games and apps based off the age demographic that is right for them. But let's talk about the 3 parts of the ESRB ratings. Starting off with rating categories. The rating categories included E for everyone, E10 plus for everyone 10 and up, T for teen, M for mature, AO for adults only, and RP for rating pending. There also used to be a category called early childhood, but that was discontinued in 2018. As for the content descriptors and interactive elements, they just tell you what themes can be expected in the game and how the user interacts with the game. As for the game ratings themselves, expect to find them in the bottom left-hand corner on the front or the back of the game's box art. So now we're all a bit more familiar on the ESRB, but I think it's important to ask not just what the ESRB is, but where it came from. So, where did it all begin? So, the year is 1976, and a little arcade game known as Death Race has started to gain traction across the United States, becoming the first game to start a controversy around the nation over violence in video games, a debate that would continue on for decades to come. The game featured the player driving a car running over stick figures, which the developers called gremlins as they ran back and forth. With Death Race gaining such popularity, for better or for worse, the basis for many violent video game arguments that are still used today were formed because of this game, such as, rather than being a passive viewer of violence, you're an active participant in creating the violence. And from there, things would only get worse rapidly. Why, you may ask? Well, there are 2 main reasons. Number 1! Graphics were evolving. With a game like Death Race, it can be argued that the premise is up to interpretation. With its simplistic early graphics, it can be said that it looks like you're killing someone. However, fast forward to 1992's Mortal Kombat, and it no longer looked like you were killing someone. You were killing someone. Number 2. Gaming was starting to happen at home. With the rise of popularity in home consoles during the 3rd and 4th generation of consoles, systems like the NES, Sega Master System, SNES, and Sega Genesis were becoming increasingly popular with kids. Maybe too popular, though. Home consoles in general were always popular with kids. However, there was always more interest in the Sega Genesis, and that's for one simple reason. Sega always advertised the Sega Genesis as the more adult console, making it instantly more popular with kids. With Sega feeling it had to live up to the more adult console title, it often sported more quote-unquote adult games, such as the aforementioned Mortal Kombat in its full bloody glory, along with other games that didn't help its violent game repertoire. It's notable to state that the SNES also had Mortal Kombat. However, it did not feature all of the blood and gore that Mortal Kombat originally had, while the Sega Genesis version featured a cheat code that would enable the blood and gore. So, not really helping Sega in this case. With violent video games such as these being in the literal house of these children, this didn't sit well with parents, and eventually it got so bad that even the US government had to get involved. On December 9th, 1993, the first United States Senate hearing of two was held on the topic of video game violence. Key players of this hearing included Senator Lieberman, Vice President of Nintendo of America Howard Lincoln, and Vice President of Sega of America Bill White. With Nintendo's and Sega's long-standing rivalry, this committee hearing would be a great place to duke it out to see who can get the most brownie points by the US Senate for having less violent video games. Sega was under a lot of fire for the games that featured on their console. The three main games shown as examples for violent video games were Night Trap, Lethal Enforcers, and of course, Mortal Kombat, all of which were on Sega's consoles, with Mortal Kombat in its full original gory state. Lethal Enforcers was a game where the player used a toy gun to shoot up several baddies on screen. However, this left both Sega and Nintendo in a shaky state, since there was a lot of moral panic around gun violence during this time. And finally, Night Trap was a Sega exclusive game said to have depicted violence against women. However, this was completely misinterpreted, as in the game, the player tries to save a group of girls at a sleepover from vampires. However, it was constantly almost depicted as in the hearing, as the goal was to try to kill these group of girls. In Sega's defense, before the hearing, they'd established a personal rating system for their games. However, the rating system was inconsistent, not specific enough, and said to be just a response to getting heat for their violent video games. Plus, Howard Lincoln had this to say about it.
This is a copy of the packaging. There was no rating on this game at all when the game was introduced. Small children bought this at Toys R Us, and he knows that as well as I do. When they started getting heat about this game, then they adopted the rating system and put ratings on it.
Yikes. With the hearing being quite the loss for Sega, but admittedly not so great for Nintendo either, it was agreed that a nationwide rating system for video games would need to be implemented. In March 5th, 1994, a second hearing was held, including Jack Hystad, Senior Vice President of Electronic Arts, to present information on a joint committee that 7 major video game companies representing about 60% of video games in the United States. These companies included Electronic Arts, Sega, Nintendo, Atari, Acclaim, Philips, and 3DO. Together, these companies would make the IDSA, the Infectious Diseases Society. Oh, that's the wrong one. The Interactive Digital Software Association was born, which would later go on to be named the Entertainment Software Association. But wait a minute, that's not the ESRB I know and love. What is this? Why did they lie to me? Well, that's actually because there's a bit of trouble between the 7 companies in the IDSA. Companies like Nintendo simply refused to work with companies like Sega offering up their hardware. They just didn't want to work with their competitors. So, something else was created. Something that let hardware and software work together no matter who created it. Something that was more modeled after the Motion Picture Association of America, with 5 categories defined by age demographics. Something that would be developed in conjunction with parents and educators. And that something was the ESRB. So yeah, that's about it. The ESRB went officially active in September 16th, 1994. Of course, that's not where the story ends. There are still plenty of future developments, such as the Kids to Adults rating being changed to E for Everyone, and the E to and Up rating being established in 2005. So, that's how we got here, but I'd like to ask, why are there still constant debate and controversies and violence in video games to this day in the mainstream? At this point, the debate about video games has been going on for decades. I mean, wasn't this problem fixed all the way back in 1994? Well, those are great questions. Questions you should try to find the answer to. I mean, with no signs about the debates of video game violence heading out anytime soon, might as well get a bit introspective about the ESRB. With all that being said, thank you for listening to my presentation. And please, have rated E for excellent day. Jesus Christ, that was so lame! Oh my...